Thank you for staying with us. On Monday, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control said the biggest source of risk faced regarding the coronavirus by the nation is from people returning to the country who have a large volume of infection. Now, although international flights have been banned into Nigeria, vehicular activity somewhat reduced, but yet still there. The different governors have talked about bus loads reducing from 100% to 60%, and some have even gone as low as 40%. But in terms of compliance, sometimes you wonder if those who are driving these vehicles, or even the commuters themselves, understand the need to space social distancing. So in this segment, we'll be talking about the commuting, transportation, and social distancing. How's all of that working out? Is there something can be done differently? And to help us discuss this, we have here in our Lagos studio, or let me just say ahead of time before I introduce the people here in our Lagos studio, that we're still expecting Musiliu Akin Sonya, who is, as MC Olomo, he's coming. He's the chairman of the Nigerian Union of Road Transport Workers in Lagos. He's being expected. And also to join us via telephone is the national chairman of petroleum tanker drivers, Salimon Oladiti, who will be joining us via telephone later on. But here in the studio in Lagos, we have former Commissioner of Transportation in Lagos, Kayode Okpefa. Thank you for joining us. And in our Abuja studio, we have Wadata Bodinga, Director, Road Traffic Services of the FCT. Thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you for having me.
So let me start here with you, Mr. Okpefa. You know Lagos, you know our Molue, you know our yellow buses, and you have an idea of how we move in Lagos. I use we because I'm here in Lagos. Do you think there's an understanding of the implication of still persisting with the almost full load that they carry?
Thanks you for bringing me. First, let me say I have no doubt that they understand, because having worked within the transport sector during the Ebola crisis and sometimes during the outbreak of Boko Haram, the leadership of the transport unions and sector cooperated well with government, and they obey many of the things that has been put forward now. So I have no doubt in my mind that they understand. However, we need to note that there is an economic issue to this issue. When you ask somebody to carry one in the front to reduce to like 50, 60, 40%, he's going to have a reduction in his
Income.
expected income or revenue. So there's going to be that element of reluctance. But be that as it may, I believe strongly that their unions have a very good control over them. So the issue should be to get their various unions to come out, and also to get the various enforcement agencies, not to arrest them, but to get at strategic locations to be seen, so that they will see that there is a need for compliance via a possible enforcement.
You see why we really need to have MC Olomo here. So tell us what the NERT is doing in Lagos to ensure that that level of compliance is followed through. But let me take you to Wadata. Mr. Bodinga, in Abuja, for instance, the bus services in Abuja are not as many, or are not as much as we have here in Lagos. Yes, they are the big buses. I'm talking about the smaller buses now. It's somewhat easier to manage the passenger load in the government-operated buses than it is with those other private-operated buses. But what is it like in the Federal Capital Territory?
Yeah, so far, so good we can say. If we look at the level of compliance between the first 2-3 days, when this policy on social distancing actually take much effect in the FCT after the announcement by the administration, because the FCT administration has responded to form a task team that comprise of several security agencies and other major stakeholders. There are about 3 teams that are set up. There is market and places of worship team, which is supposed to go around and look at all these places and ensure everybody comply to the policy of the FCT. Then there is another theme set of that is the malls, plazas, schools, and recreational areas theme, which is supposed to impose compliance as well to ensure that all these plazas and malls play by the new policy. Then our concern here now is the transport committee, which is that is equally a transport and movable or mobile material, mobile congregation, or as expected, like in the buses, in cars, in taxis, etc. And because of that, in the FCT, all the capacity buses are already directed to carry only 50% of their capacity. And this is not in obsession with construction companies and all other agencies of government that have staff buses. Then on the major public transport system, especially in the FCT, which include the taxis, we held a lot of meetings yesterday and even day before yesterday with all the relevant stakeholders. Like in the FCT, we are operating based on operators, meaning that individuals are not actually allowed to operate transportation until they come under what we call operators licensing. And these operators licensing are the ones that registered their various members. And we held meeting with them, and our parks are basically controlled by parks managers, meaning that there are no parks that are owned by unions or other things. All parks are controlled by the park managers. So we call all of them for a stakeholders meeting, and all the stakeholders has given the administration their highest cooperation and intent to work with FCT administration to ensure that we curb the spread of this very dangerous virus. Presently, most of these stakeholders are actually members of the various committees set up to ensure compliance. And as I'm in this studio, I will assure you that the members are already out there enforcing this restriction.
Okay, they're
Some
enforcing it
of these
themselves. All right.
restrictions,
Yeah, some of the restrictions.
no, yeah, some of the restrictions include having only one person in case of taxi at the front and only 2 at the rear. Then meaning that you have 4 passengers, including the driver in a taxi. Then in a bus, you have only 1 person sitting at the front with the driver, and each seat will only accommodate 2 people. Then higher capacity buses and coasters will operate 50% of their capacity. And this theme, like what I said earlier, has been going around the city. And I can tell you in the FCT, the compliance is very, very appreciable.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll get back to you. Let me. We have on the telephone Salimon Oladiti, National Chairman of the Petroleum Tanker Drivers. Mr. Oladiti, what's the situation with your colleagues, with your union as regards the restrictions? For instance, in some states have activated their lockdown. Some states have activated their lockdown, so no vehicles to come in except vehicles bringing in fuel, petrol, or food items. So what's the plan in your area to ensure social distancing and to ensure that your people are also safe as well?
Okay, good morning. How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you, Mr. Laditi.
Being on essential services to this nation, we have directed all our members across the country that they should be fully kit with hand glove, sanitizer, and nose and mouth glove. Mask, I mean. Mouth mask.
Okay, okay.
And as from Monday, any of our members that is not comply with this directive will not be allowed to enter any petroleum depot across the country from Monday.
All right. What about the number of passengers in the cabs? Because sometimes you find out that the driver, there's an auxiliary driver, then there's what you call the motorboy or conductor that sits with them. So what's the number in those cabs now?
The maximum in each cab is only the driver and the motorboy.
Okay. What about enforcement? Is there someone that will be going around to check that this is followed through? Because sometimes when they are going from one state to the other, nobody really checks them. Or do the law enforcement know this so they can also enforce that as well?
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, we have... Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Laditi.
Task force across the country that they will enforce this directive. It's a task that must be done. It's because of the safety and life of our people.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Laditi. Thank you very much. We will get back to you as we move along, hopefully. Mr. Okwefa, you've heard from Abuja, you've heard from the tanker drivers. They say they are good to enforce. They have a task force spread across the country. Now, those are the authority bodies or leadership, so to speak, but the individuals themselves.
Like I told you, during the Ebola crisis, the unions did a fantastic job in controlling their membership. And this is one group of union that has very strong control over its membership. What we need to do is to make sure they exercise those control. I spoke with the Lagos State chairman of NURTW yesterday, and he told me he was actually on the road, that he had been to 25 local governments to meet with their branches, to re-echo, that is one-on-one discussion with them, why they must obey those rules set out by the Lagos State government. By the way, the Lagos State Ministry of Transportation has set up the same guidelines, which they have to follow. And that is the way to go. I'm aware Ogun State has done the same thing. I'm aware FCT did the same thing. I'm aware, just like Otumba said, that they've done, NATO has done the same thing.
Enugu has done that,
Enugu
Cross River
also.
State.
So, and I'm also aware that the Forum of Commissioner for Transportation nationwide are sharing views. So at the level of government, that is done.
Okay, just hold your thoughts there. We'll go on a quick break. We'll come back and continue from this point. What the states have done, Enugu, Cross River, and all of that. Their commissioners, what are they sharing? Enforcement and implementation. We'll look at that in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. So we're discussing the COVID-19 and transportation, commuting generally. We spoke to the Director of Road Traffic Services in the FCT who says the city authorities are enforcing the one passenger in front, two behind for taxis. The buses have one passenger in front, two per seat within the small buses, and the big capacity buses and the coaster buses are operating at 50%. We also spoke to the National Chairman of Petroleum Tanker Drivers who says they're insisting on one driver and the conductor, and there's a task force across the country that will ensure that this is enforced. Otherwise, you can't enter the depot to pick up fuel products or enter any state whatsoever. But Mr. Okpeifa is here. Mr. Okpeifa, you were talking about what some of the states are doing, what the commissioners, Union of Commissioners, if I may call them that, what they are sharing information. But I said something about it's not just what the authorities are saying, but in terms of implementation. You deal with these guys, for instance. Let's look at Apapa where you had to work, where you had to deal with some people for a while. What's the situation like that?
Yeah, I was in Apapa on Thursday.
And you know that
Tuesday,
side has a lot of traffic.
Monday, and Saturday going back. And what I saw, or what is going on there, is not good enough in terms of social distancing. So, and that is the basis where you hear the national president of a PTD telling you about, because we have to call the transport groups. NATO, road transport owners who have issued their own, but beyond issuing this directive, the membership are another issue. They see this as a daily income. In fact, they told me, some of the crowd there, that this disease now rich man disease, but they've forgotten that the guy in the kitty happens to be a driver. And we also heard recently that there are people, something like 6 men on one of the vessels. So this is real. And what we need to do is to step up enforcement. Enforcement is not a punishment. Enforcement is to encourage compliance. Some of these guys...
But when we're doing enforcement, is there anything wrong with incentivizing some of these things?
Definitely, it's part of the thing to do. When I spoke with the Lagos State Chairman, he told me they promised some of them some foodstuffs. They've also asked them to slash some of the rates they collect. So there are so many things going on, but be that as it may, we need to get these guys to understand that this thing definitely affects everybody, so that the issue of a monetary benefit is not put across. Then also, we that they carry, we also have to be conscious not to, because I don't know why you have to carry two. This morning, I saw vehicles with 2 passengers in the front, and I saw those with 1. So you see those complying and those not complying. And this is where you must commend the police command in Lagos. I've also interacted with them, and I can see that they are making effort to put policemen at every strategic. And I was also privy to the radio communication of the Commissioner of Police to all the DPOs, and where he was telling them what to do. So by and large,
I know I shouldn't be asking you this, but one of these days we'll bring in the commissioner and ask him. The question is, those policemen that are being put out there, what about them? Are they being protected?
Yeah, that is the next level now. Like in Apapa, like you said, we have just concluded a document. We have sent out to the various stakeholders, remaining only one. That is the MPA. I want to get the input. We want to get the input from all this, because it's going to affect everybody. Then we'll send to MPA, probably today or tomorrow, where we want to actually make all of us to understand that there's no other way to slow this thing down except by socially distance. If you don't want a lockdown, we have to respect the social distancing issue. You need to see the way the Lagos State Governor holds his media brief. You see the social, even in his compound, you see people. I came in here and nobody is ready to get closer to me beyond. Everybody's keeping like 1 meter to 2 meters. But in the transportation sector, whether we like it or not, that is the medium of push most. Land, water, here. Most of the cases in Nigeria, from the records from the Lagos State Commissioner for Health, by the way, he's doing a fantastic job, and we need to keep praying for him and to commend him. There are mostly people crossing through the airspace. So there is community-to-community transfer. And what is that? It has to be through mobility and transportation. So we need to focus on that sector now. Government must focus on that sector as long as we are not yet at the point of a lockdown. Because they said it's more in Ikeja, it's more in Lekki. Before you know it, if you don't find a way to slow down the movement or the nature of the movement, you will start seeing the community-to-community transference. Luckily, we block the airspace. That is good. We can't block the waterways because they're going to bring cargo, not even completely for the airways. They're going to bring cargo for health. They're going to bring some medical consignments. They're going to bring some foodstuffs. People will have to move, like Professor Nasidi said. You have to move food from all parts of the country to Lagos, 22 plus million people. You have to move consignment to Abuja. So Lagos and Abuja.
So what could be done in the course of this movement? Now, I know instructions have been given to operators of certain vehicles to fumigate. Let me take this to Mr. Odinga. Mr. Odinga, how much of disinfecting, using the methylated spirit or sanitizers are the bus operators or transport operators in the FCT? How much of are they using? Do they clean the vehicles? How often do they clean the vehicles? Are the drivers wearing gloves? Are they using sanitizers themselves? Are they giving to the passengers before they get in? What's happening in that regard?
Yeah, that is part of the FCT policy that we are actually discussed with the major stakeholders, which equally include, like what I told you earlier, and to buttress what my boss of FIFA has said, that transportation is basically one of the major area which we must checkmate. Because if not because of the transportation factor, we wouldn't have had a single case in Nigeria at all. So meaning that we really have to do more on the area of transportation to cough out the spread of this disease. Part of the policy is that every vehicle must carry inside the vehicle either a soap and washing water or at least a sanitizer, so that every passenger who is entering your vehicle, you have to give him the water to wash his hand and the soap before he enters the vehicle, or give him sanitizer at least to sanitize his hand. And all the drivers should be wearing their nose masks to protect themselves. To be honest with you, this measure is not yet in full gear, like the issue of the distances that we have set in place. That is the enforcement of the one at the front and two at the other seat. But we are still trying to reach out to the drivers and show them why they should do that. Basically, like today, that is one of the briefing we gave to all the enforcement officers, that they must as well visit these garages to see as the people are being embarking into the vehicle, that they must have washed their hands with a fluent tap water and soap that will be available and sanitizer. And at the end of the journey, now the driver should give the passengers the sanitizer. That's what we are trying to make sure we enforce in the next 24 hours, starting from today and yesterday. We have started that.
Okay, Mr. Okpefa, he's talked about what they're doing in the FCT, what the drivers have been told to do, and how often that happened. Again, that the role of the mind of the individual. How does that work to ensure that these things, because with all the directives and policies going on, it still boils down to the individuals getting that notion or understanding the importance of it and actually doing it?
For this sector, the leadership are well informed, they are educated. For the individual operator, they are not as educated. And where they are educated, their means of survival is daily income. So sometimes survival overrides their instincts. So they need a little bit of push for them to really take the appropriate action. So the individual is key, but you don't know his mind. But that one individual can be the major problem. So rather than focusing on that individual, I think we should look more at the corporate implementation of this directive. And I've seen this. Believe me, during Ebola, I was shocked. All the motor parks in Lagos had this hand washing. The chairman Lagos confirmed to me yesterday that is already implemented. Now, if we can have the hand washing done, that means we are a step ahead. And I know that they made efforts, at least in Lagos and Abuja, that I have sort of interacted with. Now, the next stage is at the motor parks. The passenger, that's the individual, he must be made to understand that after he had washed his hands and he now enters the vehicle and there are more than 2 people on a row or more than one person sitting in front, he stands the risk of contacting that because they're going
So
to
he
be
should
exchanged.
get down.
So he should get down. And we should also make them to understand that if he doesn't get down and he gets to the next stop and the enforcement people sees him, they will ask him to come down and he will have to trek. So it's better for him to wait. And more importantly, too, is for us to know that there are no buses now in any way because the number of people on the road had reduced. So we have more buses to pick you than you need. So we need to find a way to keep get it. But the best place to do it, believe me, is at the motor park where they take off. There's always a point of takeoff and the final point of a destination. Whether you like it or not, you will have to be at any one of these points. So,
but what about the in-between?
The in-between, the unions are there, the enforcement officers are there. I don't know which bus stop you go in Lagos. You won't see LASMA. You won't see Kai.
No, but Mr. Okpaifa, if you want to go about that, people have sent videos, eyewitness reports of some, yet some, but the LASMA officials or enforcement officers are there. They are doing their own thing. And
no, get what I'm saying? There's nowhere you get to, you won't see them. So all we need to do is to tell them, ensure this thing in a polite way. Just tell the driver, educate them. Believe me, once we educate Nigerians on that this issue, that thing you want to go and chop can chop you. People will obey. The transport sector has a well-organized unions, and their members listen to their union. So I will still emphasize it. We need to get the unions more activated and assure them that it is better to keep safe. I know it will be difficult for them, but you know the road is free now. Yeah. So where you are making 2 trips before, you are likely to make like 8 or 10 trips now.
And fuel is cheaper.
So you will still make this money on the long run. And the best place to do, one of the good way to do it is to use the motor parks, use the unions, and use our enforcement officers. And I believe a lot of the states are. However, the issue of losing revenue is an issue to those operators. And this is where we need to focus and educate them that you will not lose anything. You will still make a reasonable, because it's better for them to comply and we maintain the flattening curve rather than the drive us to the point of lockdown. If we are not careful, the transport sector will drive us to lockdown earlier than government wants to.
Thank you so much. We've been speaking with Wadata Bodinga, Director, Road Traffic Services of the FCT, who joined us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Kayode Okpaifa, former Commissioner for Transportation in Lagos, was here in Lagos. We had on phone Salimon Oladiti, National Chairman of the Petroleum Tanker Drivers. And, well, we're ending the segment. Muslia Akinsoya couldn't make it, who is of the NURT, to join us here in Lagos. Thank you so much, Mr. Fekba. Sunrise will be back for the home stretch in a moment. And it's all about social distancing for you and living. Just stay with us.